Hello, welcome to our lecture on case and comparative studies, large N experiments this week we're going to talk about research strategies. These are slightly different from research methods. We will be discussing research methods in the forthcoming weeks, particularly next week and the following week. But this discussion we need to make before discussing the research techniques, because these are the strategies that could combine different research methods in its process, in its design. So we will be talking about now case studies and comparative studies. So the main, as we have discussed in the previous weeks, and I myself discussed in the previous videos, causation is very important in social sciences. So description, describing what's happened is obviously a very important matter for social research, for production of knowledge. Yet, what is at the center of the knowledge production is revealing the causations, answering the why questions. Why such and such has happened at that point, at that particular time. Why those agents were central in reproducing a particular event. So these why questions beg for causation. So these this is one of the objectives, not the main, the only, but one of the important objectives of social research. So we are trying to explain a why, a phenomena, that a result, a consequence, and we're trying to find out what causes this, right? What explains this? So this is we're trying to explain, okay? So this is dependent on this, right? So this is we call dependent variable. Okay? So this is dependent variable, and X that explains Y is taken, at least for this research, as independent, as if this is not to be explained. This is not dependent on something else. This is for this research that X causes Y is taken as independent. Okay, so it is called independent variable. So this is the the discussion we will be focusing today, and how to explain, how to reveal the causational relations among events, among phenomena, instances that we observe. And in this video, I'm going to talk about case studies and comparative studies. Okay, so the case study analysis. Case study is one of the most common research strategy in, let's say, political science, international relations, sociology, in many social science disciplines. And case study is one of the most common way of studying. So what is a case? Well, we can identify a case as a phenomenon of some sort occurring in a bounded context. So it could be an individual. So case, the notion of case is a quite wide range concept. So it could be an individual, it could be a small group, it could be an organization, a neighborhood, a city, a region, or a nation, a country, so and the like. So it could be Turkey, could be a case study, a country case study in a particular case, a study on immigration. Ankara would be a case study in a study on housing finance. A neighborhood, Batıkent, may be studied for its social culture, for its neighborhood relations, right? An organization, UN, may be a case study for organizational network and hierarchy within the institution, within the organization. So it depends on the research question, okay? But the notion of case is a particular, more or less bounded context that you observe in your research. Okay, so we will give more examples in the discussion hour for this sort of concept. So in this strategy of case study, one or small number of cases, well, at the moment I'm going to focus on one case, will be studied in detail. So that is the sort of, that is the main idea of case study. So when you focus on a case study, you focus on it in detail. So you study it with all different aspects concerning that phenomena that you are examining, you are trying to explain. So you are studying it in a multi-dimensional way, in a way. Okay, so and this both case and comparative case studies, these are open to both qualitative and quantitative research techniques, data collection and analysis techniques. That's why it is not simply a method, but it's a strategy. It can combine qualitative and quantitative, so it can combine mixed methods in itself. So, and why are we doing it? Why are we focusing on a case? So there are different objectives in case studies. Well, the objective is varying between generalization and particularization. So if it is a case to generalize, it is usually a case of a larger group. So you are picking one particular case and you are arguing that this case is representing a larger population. Therefore, by focusing on this particular case, you would be able to generalize the findings of your research. Okay, so that is usually researchers choose such strategy, such case study to develop a theory, because generalization requires some sort of abstraction and some sort of theorization, conceptualization, right? So in such case studies, the aim of the researcher is to develop some working hypotheses, some propositions that should be and that could be tested in other cases. Okay, but the idea behind such a case study is to generalize the finding. Okay, and if you are pursuing such a case, then such a case study research, then you should be picking a case that is resembling the main characteristics of some other cases. Okay, so by studying one particular case, you would deduce some more knowledge on the cases that you have not studied. That is the task of the other researchers. that, in bit by bit with each research project, that theory would be tested, verified and falsified and formed in the end. Okay, so researchers here focus on this case for its generalized characteristics. And the hypothesis, the main argument of this research is not only pertaining this case, but it may be applicable, the argument of the research, to the other cases. Okay. Another objective of a case study is particularization. Okay, so here a researcher aims to focus on the unique aspects, sui generis aspects of the case. So here the case is particularly different from the others, and yet it is existing. Therefore, it needs to be explained. How come this case is differing from the rest of it? So this is also a motivation of the social researcher, to find the uniqueness, to explain the uniqueness, to explain the question of why this is different from rest of the cases in a similar context. So here, the researcher needs to focus more on the context, because since this case is different from the rest, therefore the context is important. So this case, this study and strategy is often called as ethnography. So ethnography is etymologically means people, folk, and graphy means description. Therefore, this particularization strategy in case studies often, not all the time, but often aims to describe how the social relations in that particular context take place, how people's interrelationship makes a change in this particular setting, in this particular context. So here, the researcher needs to conduct a fieldwork. Fieldwork is to go to this particular case and to study the relations there. So in order to find the particularistic nature of this case, it is typical that fieldworks take longer time. Okay, it is typical that researcher stays, lives in that fieldwork, in that case, a relatively longer time. Okay, to understand the cultural context, to understand to the meanings, the local meanings of the concepts, of the context, of the behaviors, right? So this is, and apparently, it doesn't require detailed research design before going to the fieldwork, because it is usually when the researcher goes to the field, goes to its case, then there, while living in it, the researcher designs the research or the field work while in the case. So these are typical examples. Obviously, there are no rule book for such strategies, but these are the typical sort of features of particularistic case studies. There, the methodology is usually, the techniques of data collection is usually more depending on the researcher. Okay, and the researcher uses different data collection techniques. So it is often more eclectic. It is often more mixed methods of data collection and analysis. Okay, so what is the relationship between case studies and theory formation? So we have talked about theory and how important theories are for our understanding, for social research, and for knowledge production. So case studies have been a very central strategy for theory formation. So case studies are in many ways functional, effective, and essential at all stages of theory building process. But mainly case studies, such case studies are usually verifying the case, the theory. So it is forming a theory, all right? But to test a theory, it is usually argued that the case studies are weaker compared to other strategies in testing theories. It is usually for the theory building, for the theory formation, okay, of a particular explanation. So it is because it is mainly in the case study, if X is believed to cause Y, in a case study, researcher focuses on how X causes Y in this particular context. What are the different ways of connection between X and Y? And what is the context of X and Y? Right? So it is giving us a more comprehensive understanding of not only the X, but also the Y, and their relationship in this particular context. So it is, in that sense, it is digging, as it is written in the slide, it is digging into the details of how phenomena come about. And it is ideal, this case study is ideal for developing insights, okay? Looking at it in detail, looking at it closely, okay? So, therefore, it is, the case studies are showing us, how X and Y are related. So it is questioning different ways of explaining this situation. It is perhaps even testing some other, X's, right? So it could be X1, X2, X3, and it could be sort of detailedly analyzing if X2, if this other factor is important in explaining Y. If X3, yet another factor is important, functional, essential, necessary in explaining why. So the case studies are identifying the causal relations in a very sort of close-looked way. Okay. So yes, so they contribute. The case studies have contributed. Most of the cases, most of the theories we have in different events, explaining different events, have built on case studies. But not only case studies. Comparisons are also very important as case studies. So, as I have implied in the previous slide, so case studies would be a bit weak to test theories, okay? So in this particular case, X causes Y, but if it is, if X also causes Z, if there is another thing that X causes, or yes, X causes Y, but if there is another X, this is X1, if there is another X, X2, that also causes Y, but it is not existing in this case. So how are we going to make sense of this relationship if we don't compare, different instances of this relationship where X and Y are causally related, right? So in that sense, comparisons have been used to test these causal relations. So comparative research may be more suited for theory testing. Okay, so this is usually a sort of a common agreed understanding about comparative studies. Okay, so comparative studies. These are so usually the cases. So we are explaining this, right? So this is what we are explaining. This is, let's say, this is development. Let's say this is revolution. Okay, this is war. Okay, so we are explaining this, and in order to understand war, where do you look at? You look at a case where wars take place. If you're trying to understand revolutions, you know, how do revolutions come about? Are they made by people, or are the structural features preparing for a revolution? Do they come? Are they made? So here, this is, you know, in order to understand, in order to explain these questions, inevitably, you know, researchers look at the cases where why takes place, where war happens, where a development takes place, where revolutions takes place. So they say in a comparative studies, they often rely on selecting on the dependent variable. So how do we choose our cases in a comparative study? They say it is mostly choosing on the dependent variable. You are looking at the cases where y took place. Okay, so this is, as I have given some explanation examples. This technique involves choosing some phenomenon of political interest, gathering data on occurrence. So you are gathering data, observing the occurrence of the phenomenon, then determining what characteristics the occurrence have in common. So you focus on different cases of revolutions: Iranian Revolution, Russian Revolution, Cuban Revolution, Chinese Revolution, and then you are trying to understand. You're trying to find out about these X's, right? So to make sense of the phenomenon that we call revolution, right? So you need to. These are different sorts of different revolutions. Yet we coin the same concept, revolution. Therefore, researchers, social scientists, search for what is common. What do they have in common to explain the coming occurrence of a revolution? Okay, so it is as I have mentioned, it is a methodological strategy with a long history. Selecting on the dependent variable has found numerous applications in political science, including the study of economic growth, social revolutions, and international conflicts, such as war. So this strategy have brought about important accumulation of knowledge and very essential part of knowledge production in social sciences. Yet, you know, if you only focus on the occurrence of this y, then how are you going to understand if this x is actually causing y? Or, you know, because in every revolutions you will have x and y together, but perhaps there is something else. There is something else that is causing both x and y, right? So how do you understand? So it is, you know, there are still some how shall I say, some question marks in this strategy. Social researchers, those who focus on knowledge production, try to improve this way of explanation, this way of revealing the causation. So they have been, there were some critiques to selecting on the dependent variable because they have argued that when only cases that have achieved the outcome of interest are studied, then as I have mentioned, so the apparent causes may not be the real causes. So the scholars who question the viability, the importance and importance, let's say, of selecting on dependent variable, they argued that, well, we need to change, we need to find some cases of y. So the y should also variate in our study. We shouldn't only look at the cases of successful y's, but occurrence of y, but we should be also able to choose a case where y did not take place. So if you also focus on a case that y did not take place, then we should be able to see if there is x. You know, if perhaps x is there, but y is not there. So if it is the case, then this x causes y fails. So the scholars argued that the research should variate. The cases should variate on the y as well. We should be able to choose where not only the y exists, but also y does not exist. So this perhaps, you know, brings about the necessity of comparative studies. So for this, there are some other sort of logics of comparison, but I'm going to talk about a famous and most sort of common and quoted logic of comparison in social sciences. So these are the two methods of comparison. One is a method of agreement, and the other one is method of difference. I will be talking about those two a bit more in detail in the next video. Okay, bye-bye.